Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is our Simple Abundance year, and you reached me at the tail end of a hurricane up here in the Northeast. I think it's finally settling down a little bit. So I wanted to talk to you today again. We are following along with Sarah Breathnach in her book Simple Abundance this year, learning about all her principles and talking about each of the daily entries. And today's entry, August 4th, 2020, I told you guys yesterday it was called Desire, Ask, Believe, Retrieve. And in reading that, because actually this is a brand new entry, it's not in the past edition of Sarah's book, but in reading that, I thought it was going to be about manifesting. And like I've mentioned the law of attraction before, so when you believe it, you'll see it, sort of thinking like that. But this is actually about, well, it's not only about the asking process, but it's more about soothing and asking for help or coping mechanisms for spirit, as far or looking to spirit as a coping mechanism for the times when things get out of control. So I can relate to this. I wish I had a stronger sense of spirit. I have somewhat of a sense of spirit, but I do envy those that are very connected to their faith and they feel like they can just give everything over to God. Because I did feel like that earlier in my life, and I think there's something very comforting about that. I think now I wish even in my life that there was somebody there on a daily basis that I could just bounce things off of or just weigh the pros and cons. I do that myself already in my journal, as you know. And I do have my angel council that I've mentioned to you guys. If you haven't seen that video, you can watch that from a few weeks ago. That would be another place that I could look for comfort as well. So I'm going to read a few things that Sarah says, and she asks us right off the top of the entry, are you a worrier? I think I am. You know, I don't think I used to be so much, but I definitely, well, I have a lot to worry about right now, so maybe that's why I'm being more of a worrier, but yes, I can relate to that. And she says we all are to a certain extent, but some of us are more pessimistic than others. And when we worry, it's always the worst possible thing that comes first to mind. So that also rang true to me as well. And I have been told that I do what's called in the psychological world catastrophic thinking or catastrophizing. And I think I'm a master at it. And especially over the last year, I unravel. I have this one worry, and then I can write down everything and it all comes just, down to everything being horrible. And so I'm glad that I have my daily gratitude pages, because those do center me and at least keep me in a practice of recognizing there are good things to be grateful for. I do have to give myself a break also, because the last 12 months, more than any other time in my life, have brought me circumstances that have brought out the worrier gene in me. And this catastrophizing thing is becoming a pattern. And it's not even pessimism. Like, I do think that sometimes you can have a situation and maybe you don't look on the bright side. I actually think I'm pretty good at looking on the bright side, and I've been more of a Pollyanna in the past, if you know what that means. So I've tended to just be like, oh, everything will be fine, but faced with some serious hierarchy of needs things like income, shelter, food, and now we have this pandemic on top of everything, and who knows what else is coming. It's all been a lot. It's been a lot. So I know I'm not alone. And I don't mean to be a downer again. Sometimes I go there, but this one is not meant to be a downer. But I just wanted to mention the catastrophizing because in therapy, I was given a worksheet one time that it helps you break down the thoughts. The one thing I don't like about it is that you're supposed to identify what is the worst thing that could happen. And at the bottom of the sheet, you're going to rate how possible it is that that may happen. And usually, I guess the point is that your mind may go to the worst thing ever, and when you really think about it, it's probably like 1% chance that that bad thing would happen, right? But I don't really like having to identify what the worst thing is, even though I've already thought of it in about 5 different ways. In fact, getting to the worst thing is hard for me because I have so many little things along the way before I even get to that worst thing. You know, I had a situation recently and I literally lost 2 days out of my life worrying about this thing. And it all worked out. It miraculously worked out. I mean, I'm shocked to say it worked out favorably because in my mind, there was a 1% chance that it was going to work out the way it did. I can't even still believe it did. I had everything laid out and I tried to come to some sort of a place of peace where I thought, okay, if this is the worst case scenario, I'm going to be prepared for it, and this is my coping mechanism, and this is my concession to sort of like appease that in terms of the situation. It involved other people. But anyway, I wasn't able to look on the bright side. Now I need to add that situation to my little gathering of stories where things have worked out miraculously, right? Anyway, sorry, that's very vague. I don't want to go into the details of it, but I know for sure, and I'm just sharing, that I too can get in this place, and I lost 2 days of that week. Couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew there was going to be a conversation that was coming up in 2 days from that time when everything happened, and I just kept going over, and like I was totally prepared for the worst. So part of that catastrophizing sheet is identifying that. And then I don't remember what the very last thing is. I think you're also supposed to think of the other like the opposite side of it. Because hopefully to get rid of that sort of thinking, you can realize that there are a whole bunch of other possibilities. We don't know the future. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew the future? I don't know. I go back and forth about that. There are some things I wish I knew for sure. I think intuitively I know, but then maybe they haven't happened yet, and so I'm just like, why aren't they happening yet? Or if you're trying to make a decision, it can be a lot. But we did talk recently about following the heart and figuring out what feels better than the other in terms of trying to decide between something. So I'm doing my best with that. So Sarah tells us exactly what I just said about worrying is a great thief of time. Once that situation was resolved, I was really relieved and I didn't care about anything else. But I did say to a friend, I said, I will never have those 2 days back that I spent just in torment. But I'm glad it worked out. So at least I didn't have those 2 tormented days followed by a bad outcome, which I was prepared for. Anyway, she says, this is Sarah saying, often when we stew, we think that we're doing something positive about the problem. at least we're thinking about it. Instead, what we're doing is setting off an escalating spiral that can ruin an entire day for ourselves and those in our vicinity. Yes, I will say it's a good thing that nobody else had to go through that with me. If you find yourself fretting over an issue that literally you can't do one thing about today, instead of working yourself into a frenzy, just stop. One of the more brilliant time management secrets shared by Jesus is, quote, "Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries of its own." That's from Matthew verse 6, chapter 34. No, chapter 6, verse 34. And you know what? This advice is spot on, Sarah tells us. If the upset is too much for you to handle today, can you have a conversation with Spirit, she asks. And she goes on to share that I've mentioned this before, she definitely has a Christian base to this book, and I think she feels like she can comfortably give it over to God. Remember I mentioned Julia Cameron? She has the book The Artist's Way that Sarah mentioned in the August Joyful Simplicities. She said Julia Cameron says that we should start to think of spiritual intervention in our lives as GOD, standing for good, orderly direction. And she says God equals a soul-directed GPS. So actually that could be like what I was saying, if you're trying to decide on the different paths. And I mentioned this before, I think back in my affirmation video from March. If you do think of your guidance system from Spirit or your authentic self, it is like GPS. It's going to keep recalculating your route to get you back there, but you may go off track. But if you follow the feelings that are your point of attraction, then you're going to be back on the calculated route, if you think about the GPS. And I like how when I'm mentioning the Abraham Hicks teachings again, when Abraham speaks of the GPS in terms of law of attraction or alignment, Abraham always says that the GPS machine, it just talks in a normal voice, it doesn't get angry. It just keeps telling you, recalculating, when possible, make a legal U-turn. It just stays very calm. Like, that's what Spirit's there for. They're not judging us. They're not saying like, you dummy, you're worried again. You just had that miracle the other day. We talked about that recently too. Like, they could be speaking to me right now being like, you just had that bad thing happen and it worked out perfectly. And now you're worried again 2 days later? Come on. Like, no, Spirit stays very calm, just like the GPS voice. And I like the other thing too. The GPS machine never asks you where you used to be either. It's always about the destination. You don't say like, put the coordinates in and I want to go here. It's not saying like, well, where were you yesterday? It's just going from where you are right now. So you can start over every day. And if this worrying thing is your thing, then you may be starting from zero every day and trying to decatastrophize your thoughts. I'm right there with you. Should get the worksheet out and start doing some of these things. But right now, I'm in such crisis and just trying to I'm in survival mode. So it's hard for me sometimes to analyze my thoughts in this situation. Like, I'm trying to keep myself stable. But it's almost like I don't want to go there because I'm already living in that like on the edge place. And hopefully over the next few months, a few things will be changing for the better, and hopefully I'll be able to get to a more stable place. Sorry again to bring myself into it so much, but I can just really relate to this one. I bet you can too. Sarah goes on to say, many of the worries that keep us up at night are about money. Sometimes that can be the case. And Sarah goes on to say that God is the perfect solution for the worries about money. And in fact, that people that give the worry about money over to God, whether they are lacking or have excess, typically do find, just like if you think about giving away what you might not think you have, if you give away like a certain percentage to the church or something spiritual like that, then it should make room and come back to you, right? That's a whole other topic, but money can definitely be a worry. Sarah goes on to say, do you remember when I told you that now I started to call everything that happens that appears to be a crisis or upsetting to me a blessing? We did talk about that in the Bless Your Circumstances video. She goes on to say, I know it sounds so counterintuitive. However, in all the inspirational books on my bookshelves, beginning with the Bible, the one constant thread that runs through them all is the power of our own words to change our own lives, for sure. Change your thoughts, change your life. That's a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I love. Oh, I love this part here. Listen to this. Did you know that some cars come with an emergency reserve tank of gas that only kicks on when the regular tank is completely empty? That's how we feel in crisis mode when we can see no way out of our current dilemma. We're driving on fumes. So see, that's where I am right now. I'm totally on fumes. Well, I believe that Spirit has endowed each of us with a spare tank of spiritual moxie. And when we call a crisis a blessing, our soul automatically switches over to the emergency tank. That's pretty cool, right? To think that? I like that. Maybe it's not the blessing we were praying, expecting, or hoping for, but there's enough gas in the moxie tank to get us safely home. There are a lot of practices that do tell you every day to bless even the most difficult things. I haven't tried that yet. Maybe that will be my takeaway from today. And who is she quoting here? Marjorie Holmes. I've learned that simply to ask a blessing upon one's circumstances, whatever they are, is somehow to improve them, and to stop some mysterious source of energy and joy. And to tap some mysterious source of energy and joy. That makes more sense. I came upon one of the most ancient and universal truths, that to affirm and to claim God's help even before it is given is to receive it. So that does make sense. If you were thanking God or Spirit for anything that came to you, whether it's difficult or not, thank you for this. Thank you for this challenge. Thank you for this worry. I remember I was working with a life coach about 5 years ago, and I remember I was having this issue with the IRS because there was a problem with the taxes. It was nothing to do on my end, but anyway, I don't want to go into the details of that. Everything worked out with that as well. But I was so angry about it because I had to sit on the phone for 3 hours, and it was like I kept having to call, and they still hadn't fixed it, and it was all this stuff. So I'm working with the life coach, and I'm so angry, and she said, what a blessing this anger is. And I was like, what, are you kidding me? Like, I don't want to be angry. But she was like, she was telling me to bless the circumstances because it was bringing up anger that I probably had for other things in my life. And it was showing me that I was really angry inside about a lot of things. So that was, again, like blessing the anger. And I was like, in that moment, I couldn't take that positively. I was just like, are you kidding me? But I get the point of blessing anything, whether it seems good or bad. And then just more of the quote from Marjorie Holmes. Lift up your worries and ask for grace to get through the rest of your day. There is an abundance of amazing grace available to all of us if we simply learn to ask for it. Sarah goes on to say, one of the reasons we worry is because we feel powerless to control our future. Or like I said, that we don't know the future. So then the name of this entry was called Desire, Ask, Believe, Receive, right? And the exact order of those words was put together by Stella Chiriel Mann, M-A-N-N. She was a mystic and a popular spiritual writer during the 30s and 40s. And she said to do them in that order. Begin praying or rearranging your thinking in that order, and you'll understand why she did. That's what Sarah says. Desire, ask, believe, receive. I mean, the asking would be the second one, right? So the desire or the need is first. And then you ask, maybe for help, you ask for strength to see it as a blessing. Then you believe that Spirit's got your back, and that maybe you believe that everything is working out for you. And then you receive. So that does fit in with the law of attraction. Ask and it is given. Well, there's a lot in here, and I know I rambled on a lot about my own life, but hopefully you took something away from that. And I have a feeling that I'm not alone in having challenges with worry and maybe leaning on the dark side in my worst times. I like when I'm the opposite, though. And when I'm really happy and when I've been living authentically and I don't have these specific worries, then I do tend to look on the bright side. And I know there are a lot of things that have worked out for me in my life. So that's why I collect the stories and try to remind myself as well. And also why I, in my journal, a lot of times, if I just write down, like, what am I thinking right now? And then try to turn that thought around and turn it into what I would like to be thinking about the same situation. And 9 times out of 10, the worst case scenario is probably not going to happen. It's definitely your mind running away with the possibilities. Maybe you have to sit with it, though, and do an analysis sort of activity like I mentioned before, and rationalize with yourself about what the real percentage rate is for the really bad thing happening versus it's probably 50-50 on a given day, right? But we just have to wait and see. You know, she said that we can't control the future. We don't know the future. So that's really, I mean, this is my own statement about anxiety, but that's really what anxiety is all about, right? We want to control the future, or we want to know the future. If we did, then we could relax. And that's making me think of another thing from Abraham Hicks. This is a fun exercise you could do in your journal. What if you knew that the thing that you wanted was definitely coming? How would you act differently? Like, you get on the road, again with the GPS, like, you know you're going from Boston to Los Angeles or something. You know you're going to get there. So you know you're on your way. Well, you hope your car doesn't break down and all that stuff. But, like, you know if you follow the route, you're going to get there. So you know California exists, and you know you're on your way to it. And you know other people have driven that road before. So you have faith. So you don't necessarily worry. There might be things along the way that worry you, but say you really wanted something in your life, like maybe it's a relationship, or it's a new place to live, or a job, or something like that. Like, what if you knew that those things were going to happen? Like, have you ever called a psychic before? There's something in that sometimes if a psychic will tell you, which I don't know that they necessarily always know. I think we have free will and they're just reading one particular outcome. But like, if someone tells you like, yes, that relationship's going to work out, or yes, you're going to get your perfect job, you know, before the end of the year, or yes, you're going to buy that house you've always wanted, or whatever. If you can truly believe, and that's one of the words here in this entry title, if you truly believe, you probably would act differently. Like, say you knew that you were going to get the house. Well, you'd probably start packing up your current place. You'd probably start looking online for curtains and paint swatches or whatever you wanted to do. Maybe if you knew the relationship was definitely happening, you might get yourself more prepared. You might get some new outfits or trim down or start looking at wedding dresses or something like that. And like, if you knew those things were coming, you could relax a little bit, right? You wouldn't have to worry. But we don't know what's going to happen. So it's really more about how we manage our worry, right? And I am right there with you guys. If you are worriers, I am right there with you. I'm working really hard to try to see if I can get a couple of worries off my plate so that I can just start living again and just not have these major worries to be just weighing me down. They really are. I'm surprised I'm doing as well as I am, but I just have my moments. And then like when something like that situation that I mentioned, where I lose a couple of days worrying about something small that's not even like a big issue with the larger things I'm worrying about. I'm in the vibration of anxiety right now. So I'm really looking to get on more stable footing and get some of those things off my plate. So we can all hope. What an uncertain world it is and has been this year. But if I can just remember that Spirit's got my back, and I've been through a lot of things in the past, and I've had many blessings in my life, then if I can focus more on that, then maybe I could let some of the worry go. I think I could talk about this forever. I better sign off. Thanks for watching. We're having a great month so far. Lots to talk about with these August entries, and I will see you soon for another video. I appreciate your comments and all your likes and the new subscribers too. Thanks again. Bye-bye.